I think another really, really important thing is you're watching these blocks. They're blocking balls in all different directions. Your core strength is so important, especially for every degree you're reaching that way. You're taking on the ball this way. So you got to stabilize your core so you don't rotate. Or if you're going to go up and joe someone, that core is so, so important. Like how important was, like, I know, Martin, you were one of the most jacked guys in the world tour. You had these massive six-pack abs. Like how important was training your core for being a blocker?
Very important. So think about this. When you're on the ground and then you're, let's say, pressing weight overhead, you're depending on the ground and your attachment to the ground to really stabilize you and allow you to generate force. But when you're in the air, you're not on the ground anymore. So the center of your body, imagine just below your belly button, your core, what Reid just mentioned, is so critical because that's where your body starts. Like that's the basis of your stability to then be able to, the further outside or away from your center of gravity, the more stress there is, the stronger your core needs to be. So the foundation of your core, anything that attaches to your pelvis or your rib cage, as well as the spine, has to be really, really strong and stable for you to make a really good move and be strong and supported there. So core is fundamental for any blocker. And maybe while we're talking about that, what would be a great way to train the core, Reid?
Well, I think there's multiple ways. It needs to be multiple dimensions of training your core because as Martin mentioned, you're blocking, you're off the ground. Like I cannot push my feet in the ground, which then often activates my core. So I like to start like any newer athlete to training their core, doing a lot of isometric based exercise. That just means really holding a fixed position. So think different planking variations. And I mean, you can progress these planking variations to be very tough. So start with a regular plank, then a plank reach, and then maybe like a high plank shoulder touch, and maybe just a one-arm plank. But what you're doing is you're creating different force vectors that your body's having to resist. And when you're a blocker, that's what you're doing. When I reach one way, accept the ball that way, there's a force vector coming this way, and I'm trying to stabilize with my body. But after you get better at your isometric exercise, you need to progress this, and it needs to be more dynamic-based core exercise. So for instance, you could be standing on one foot and you have to catch like a light medicine ball, like they throw it, catch it and throw it back, or different things where you're accepting balls or different weighted things outside of your body. So you're working on dynamically stabilizing and getting it back. So as I mentioned, a good one is just be standing on one foot. A coach is tossing a ball outside. You got to catch it, control it, and just throw it back. So different, more dynamic base. So when you're training your core, you're newer to training or it's new in your off season, keep your core training simple, like isometric type of exercise. And once you've progressed at that, your core training needs to be much more dynamic in order for it to actually transfer on the court into the beach game. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, big time. And I would say one more thing. If you're training your core, understand that you're going to want to block the hollow body position, and owning what's called the hollow body position is critically important. So I want you to imagine the perfect piked position as a blocker where your hands are overhead, your face is facing forward, your chin is tucked up a little bit, and you're really, really using that top and an ab to pull over. Your toes are pointed in your pike. So this is very like gymnastics oriented position. Look it up on YouTube, the hollow body position. You want to be able to own that position and be able to make moves from there. So everything has to be really, really tight. But the reason why I want to bring that up is I see too many young blockers, too many blockers, even at higher levels, they're maximum jumping and then they tuck their head down. And it's a reflex that you protect yourself and drop your head. And if you can teach your body to maintain your vision and eye contact with the hitter and the ball and reach your head up, you're now going to be able to see and make moves. But I see too many blockers committing to that maximum block jump. They pike and then they drop their head and they lose their vision entirely. So over time, you can break that reflex to be able to look up and see the ball at the moment of contact, which I think is really, really important.
I love how you said the hollow body hold. So I do a lot of workout programming, and hollow body variation is in almost all our programs. So if you're a newer athlete, we start off with doing like a dead bug variation, which is you're on your back, your legs are up, and you extend your opposite arm, opposite leg. And then we'd progress to something that's more like a regular hollow body hold, like Martin was saying. And then we progress that to like a hollow body rock where you're rocking in those positions. So I love that you brought that up because that's literally in all our players training programs, some sort of variation for it. Another underrated core type of exercise that I think are really important for blocking is you actually doing different med ball throws, whether it's a med ball slam, a rotary slam, and those different things. They might seem more like a hit harder exercise, but when you're doing these powerful movements, it's not only bringing in our core muscles to perform the action and to rotate, but it's also to stabilize that ball in different positioning. So I think med ball throwing exercise, or at least the athletes I've worked with, have had a profound impact on them to be able to stabilize their body when they're kind of reaching into different directions, getting hit with different force vectors. So that being said, Martin and I have hit on a few things about core exercise. We talked about isometric exercise. We talked about more dynamic type of core training, and we've talked about throwing med balls. And I think you including that into your training strategically is going to have big, big effects as a blocker.